Find other great podcasts like this one at podmoth.network.
Hello! Welcome to BSP Believer Skeptic Podcast.
The commercial where two idiots debate weird phenomena.
I'm Chris, I'm the believer.
I'm Cody, I'm the skeptic.
We are an LGBTQ paranormal comedy podcast.
And proud members of the Podmoth Network.
So, did you know there's a creature in Japan called a kappa that tries to suck a bejeweled life force out of your anus?
I did not, and I'm not even going to try debunking that. Instead, I volunteer as tribute.
Okay, so if you like your podcast a little spooky, a little mysterious, a lot gay, do we have the show for you?
Just listen and subscribe to BSP Believer Skeptic Podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. And for more content, search BSPodPHX on social media or visit bspodphx.com. Bye!
Hey, Twisted listeners, I'm Cindy.
And I'm Diva.
And this is Twisted Listers, a podcast about murder
and lists.
And we're brought to you by the Podmoth Podcasting Network. They're amazing. Check out the other podcasts on the channel, on the network. And this is part 2 of Hitchhiker Murders. And can I just tell not my story, but can I tell the story about my story?
Yeah.
Okay. You guys, the case that I'm covering, I didn't realize it until I started reading it. So I was going through, I was I was looking through some of the other stories and I was like, this one isn't that exciting. This one's not that great, but I swear to God, it made the fates made this happen because
meant to be.
Yeah, I checked 4 other stories before choosing this one, and then as I started to read it, I realized that I know the person who fucking cracked this case after 43 years.
It's so exciting. Yeah.
So he's a forensic scientist living in Bend, Oregon, and he gave me a 30-minute PowerPoint presentation on how they solved this case. So that's what I'm going to go over in my case. But anyway, I'm just so excited. I'm bursting.
It's very exciting. Yeah.
It's
going to be a very special edition of Twisted Listers today. Yes.
Yes. But real quick, if you'd like to join us on Patreon, I'm going to do Big Ed. I'm about halfway done with my research, so hopefully very soon.
Excited.
Also, I'm going to go take pictures where he used to live because it's a mile from my house, where he grew up. But it's not the same place. It got demolished, but it's, so whatever. But it's still where he lived, and it's crazy close to here. So, but if you'd like to join us on Patreon, it's patreon.com/twistedlisters. If you would like to join us on TikTok, which I'm going to do an Ezra Miller one tonight, you can join us at Twisted Listers. We are almost at 1,000 people on our Instagram, but people keep fake following us, and it's really pissing me off.
It happens to me all the time. Yeah.
I know. I hate it. So if you'd like to follow us for real on Instagram, you can do that at
Twisted Listers PCast.
And if you'd like to check out our website, you can do that at
twistedlisterspod.com.
And if you'd like to send us an email, you can do that at
twistedlisterspod@gmail.com.
That's right. Okay, so
I also want to say that both of us are sacrificing for the love of the podcast right now because we are both going without AC in Los Angeles, where it is the surface of the sun. So
yes, it is no joke 100 degrees where I am right now, and I'm in a room that is being beat down on by the sun, and I can't have the air on because this is a covered patio where I am, and the air conditioner, judging by the looks of it, has been there since 1970. So when it turns on, it sounds like an old jalopy, and it fills the room with noise. So I'm sitting here with a hot computer on my lap with no AC.
And it will only get hotter every year because we're all going to slow roast alive because of capitalism.
Go capitalism! Right.
Woo! Gotta have our stuff.
Yeah.
Gotta have a bunch of stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start, I think. Sorry, Cindy just teased you with her amazing case, but mine's pretty good too.
Oh, fuck yeah, it is.
I'm going to do Ivan Milat.
Ivan Milat.
Yeah, there you go. That's how I got to say it. Milat.
Okay, sorry. One other thing. I'm so sorry. I've been meaning to touch on this.
Yes.
We got a review. It was a 5-star review. So they said this with love, but they said that we cover, like, we give historical perspective and corniness. They called us corny, but they meant it in a good way.
Yeah. No, that's fair.
And I was like, that's me.
I accept it.
That's a Cindy contribution. I do that.
I accept it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not mad.
I've been call that out because I thought that was so funny, and I immediately knew. I was like, "Oh, that's me right here." That's the corniness.
That's fair.
Yes. Okay. Anyway, Ivan Milat,
right.
Go on.
Ivan Milat and the backpacker murders, and at the end, I'm going to talk about Wolf Creek a little bit. I will mention it throughout.
Thank you.
I am obsessed with Wolf Creek, the franchise, as it were.
Oh, really?
As we love it. And as I talk about Ivan Milat, I do not ever see the real guy. I see the guy from Wolf Creek.
The guy from Wolf Creek is so good.
He's kind of a better Ivan Milat than Ivan Milat.
I agree.
He's kind of like what you want him to look like, and he's just hits that sweet spot.
Yeah.
Of what an Australian serial killer should be like.
I agree fully. That movie is so fucked. Okay, I will just tell you real quick. It's like the first horror movie that I ever saw that did not have like a good outcome, and I was like, holy shit.
It's one of the better like horror movies after Real Crimes. I think, and it doesn't water it down. I don't think. It's pretty accurate. I think what happened. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll circle back to that at the end, horror movie fans. And it's also Halloween. Happy Halloween, everyone. It's August. So I literally am about to get some orange lights out in my house.
Yeah, Rory's putting our stuff up September 1st. So that's where.
Oh no! Yeah, I can't wait.
We're late. I know. I realize.
Can't wait.
I realize.
Can't wait. Okay, so Ivan Milat was a Capricorn. He was born on the 27th of December, 1944. Okay. He belonged to a very large, very wild family of Croatian immigrants to Australia. He was one of 14 Milat kids.
That's fucked up.
Yeah, poor mom.
Yeah, no shit.
He worked at a concrete factory a lot of his life. His father was super violent as they were growing up. They grow up, the whole family's super poor, kind of in childhood and adulthood, pretty much. Although Ivan does have a house later, so I think he does okay enough to have a house. 2 of his siblings, when he was young, actually died, and one was quite traumatic. His sister Margaret died in his arms, I believe, after she was hit by a car.
Whoa!
Mm-hmm. So that was said to be kind of a turning point of his. It wasn't great for him.
Yeah.
But throughout their childhood and adulthood, Ivan was a bully among the group of siblings. He often bullied his brothers, picked on them, all around shitty dude. He and his brothers, however, did tons of crime, some more than others. They all had long criminal records for things like theft, car theft, and even as a really young kid, Ivan would get in trouble at school for having knives and guns. Just wild from the start here.
So he's just wilding out.
Yeah, and generally Ivan is like really into guns, like really, like a whole lot. And especially like there's a lot of pictures you'll see online of him posing with like ridiculous looking guns, like bazookas and assault rifles and like, ridiculous guns.
Just over the top shit.
It's silly. Not for self-defense. It's
right.
Silly. Yeah.
It's just dumb. Yeah.
Yeah. His brother Boris Milat would later say that Ivan shot a taxi driver accidentally in a robbery. The man was paralyzed as a result, but Ivan was never caught, and he just told Boris this like off the cuff, like, "Oh, by the way,
P.S."
Yeah,
wow,
I murdered a man, and an innocent man ended up being convicted and doing 5 years in prison, apparently, according to Ivan.
Wait, did he murder him or just like maim him for life?
He shot him.
Okay, he didn't die. Oh, he killed him.
No. Sorry. Boop, boop, boop. I literally just said that he was paralyzed.
Okay, so he paralyzed him. Okay, yeah.
So, attempted murder, perhaps.
Yes. Or just disregard for whether or not the man lived.
Yes.
Generally. Okay.
Ivan also attempted to rape and murder 2 women in 1977, but was not charged for this.
Okay.
Falling through. Yep.
That sounds right. I mean, yeah, that happened a lot.
Ivan, here's his relationship details here. He got together with a 16-year-old girl who at the time was pregnant with his cousin's baby.
Oh, fuck.
Mm-hmm.
It's a classy family.
Very classy. So he hooks up with this 16-year-old. He's like in his late 20s, I believe, at the time.
Ugh.
They got married in 1983. Another source I saw said 81. But in any case, Ivan is a shit husband.
Weird.
As you may imagine. Yeah, it's tracks.
Shocking.
No, he was really nice and like loving. Yeah. No. Horrible as a husband. super physically abusive and also controlling, like had to kind of possess that person.
Was he raising the cousin's baby then? Like, what's the deal with that?
I guess.
I really want to know.
Yeah, it's probably
That's
not a
so
good
weird.
dad either. Yeah.
Yeah, no.
So she ended up leaving him in 4 years after they got together, and she divorced him officially in 1989.
Nice. Okay.
He does not take it well, the divorce, of course.
Right.
And the divorce, of course.
Divorce is a divorce, of course. Sorry.
Yeah.
And any Parks and Rec fans? Okay.
There's the corniness right there. I found
There it is. Fuck.
So, yeah. So Ivan harasses her. He also, as part of this harassment campaign, after she leaves him, just casually burns down her parents' house.
Casual. Very casual.
Mm-hmm. And about 6 months after the divorce, Ivan starts to go on an infamous murder spree. And some people speculate that it's because he was, mad about the divorce, but I don't really think so. I think he had probably killed before this and didn't need an excuse.
Yeah, I think this was a long time coming. I think blaming it on the divorce is just like a covert way of like blaming it on the woman.
Yeah, and maybe it was just the simple fact of like there was one less person to catch him or catch onto it.
Yeah, totally.
Empty house. He's like, okay, well, I got more. I'm going to have some me time. Do things that I like. Bachelor lifestyle.
Really focus on my interests.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, self-care for Ivan Milat is murdering. Okay.
Oh my god.
All right, so now we're going to go through a series of gruesome incidents. So our first victims are James Gibson and Deborah Everest. They are both 19 and they were both Australian. They had last been seen in 1989, and they were both from, like I said, Victoria in Australia, and they had been last seen hitchhiking in the area.
Okay.
Some of James's belongings were actually found about 5 years before their bodies would be found separately.
Oh,
and
weird.
They were found north of Belanglo Forest, and they were placed carefully on a guardrail, which is like kind of implying that Ivan wanted them to be found, and he was probably trying to throw them off from where the bodies actually were, which
that
I'll
makes sense.
Circle back to the kind of finding of all the bodies once I'm done with this spiel.
Okay.
But James and Deborah, when they were found, their bodies had showed that they had been stabbed multiple times. James was stabbed so deeply that his spine was severed.
That's a thing, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So this is as represented in Wolf Creek.
Yes.
Accurately.
Yes.
He would stab people's spines in such a way that they were they could not move, but they were still conscious and could feel pain.
Yeah, which is insane. And also like very, very specific.
Yes.
Like to paralyze somebody enough that they can't move, but they can still feel like what?
I don't know if I've heard of anyone else doing that. It's very specific.
Yeah, it really is. It's terrifying.
Yeah. Deborah had a broken jaw and she was severely beaten and she was stabbed in the back.
Okay. Gnarly.
James Gibson, Deborah Everest. In 1989, we have Paul Onions, the legendary Paul Onions.
Yes, Paul.
He's 23. Mm-hmm. True crime legend. He was from Birmingham in the UK. He decided to backpack across the Australian outback, which for all these people, man, I ask why. I ask why.
Why are you doing
Why is this your vacation choice? Like, it just sounds so hot. It sounds so
spidery.
What's the word? Like orange, beige. Like I'm just not
barren.
Yeah.
Hot and barren and
not a lot of landscape.
Giant spider. I just keep saying spiders.
Poisonous animals.
Honestly,
yeah.
Have you seen the spiders there? I cannot.
So many poisonous animals.
Everything's trying to kill you. No.
Yes. So that's what Paul does. And he was going to backpack to go to a fruit picking job to earn some money to, I guess, further his hitchhiking journey.
P.S. Australian listeners, because we have a lot of you, like, we fucking love you. Like, we think you guys are great. But, like, just that area, like, just no.
We just think it has a lot of serial killers. I mean, I'm sure some of them might agree with us.
Yes, I think so.
There's a reason all the big cities are, like, on the coast. Yeah. You know, like, kind of towards the edges there.
Yep.
A little more hospitable.
Exactly.
So I have a friend who lives on the Gold Coast. I really want to go visit her.
Dude,
awesome.
Me
so
too.
Nice. Yeah.
It's not called the Gold Coast for nothing. Like, that's a good fucking place to go.
Yeah,
you know?
it really is.
Fuck yeah.
Anyway, sorry. All right. So back to Paul Onions here. While hiking through the Belanglo State Forest, which is just fun to say, and Australia also has a lot of wacky names of things. A lot of that.
Yeah.
So he's picked up by a guy who is, spoiler alert, Ivan Milat, but he calls himself Big Bill, quote unquote.
Who the fuck calls themselves Big Bill?
Like, he's probably like, everyone calls me Big Bill, you know,
No,
and
they
stuff.
don't.
Probably what he's like. And this Big Bill character asks Paul a ton of questions, goes all into his background, says he comes from a family of Croatian immigrants, says he's divorced. He also goes into a bunch of tirades that are racist and sexist, and Paul is like, oof, you know.
So really,
like,
the only thing that Ivan changed about himself was his name.
Yeah, that's it.
Otherwise, it was like a fair representation.
Filling it all, yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
What a turd.
So Ivan Bill pulls over and says,
Big Bill.
I have to get something out of the trunk really quick. Paul is like very fucking smart right here in this moment, gets his bad spidey senses tingling, bad feeling about this. And in a very smart move, he just fucking bails. He just runs. Boop, 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 boop. And he zigzag runs. Very smart. Unlike Rickon Stark in Game of Thrones, right?
Yeah,
he's like run zigzagging it.
Fucking idiot. Dude, that whole scene from Game of Thrones made me I was like, are you fucking kidding me?
So
Come on. Who raised you? Anyway.
So yeah, he zigzag runs through the freeway and manages to flag down another car who thankfully picks him up and shuttles him away. And as he's running away, he hears Ivan fire 2 shots. That's like a horror movie. Like,
ooh, wow.
Yeah, literally. Paul goes to a local police station and gives a statement about what happened, but it's not taken very seriously. They're like, okay, sure, buddy. You know, they just kind of file it away.
Is the rape?
Yeah. They just filed away. Mm-hmm. In 1991, boop, boop, boop. Fast forward to our next incident here. January 1991. 20-year-old Simone Schmidl is a German backpacker. She was hitchhiking to meet her mother in Melbourne, maybe like a family vacation. Melbourne. Yes. Kind of like a family vacation.
Okay.
She was found stabbed and her spinal cord was also severed.
Jesus.
Keep in mind that the finding takes place later. I'm just telling you what like happened to them.
Right.
So December of that year, 1991, Gabor Neugebauer and Anya Habschied were bound and were abducted and then bound and shot 6 times.
Yeah, I remember this one for some reason. I feel like something special happened to them or something different or something like not entirely like, I don't remember. I was just like doing a deep dive and I remember that one for some reason, but I don't know that there was anything. I might be tripping.
Yeah, I mean, I have strangled and shot in the head.
Yeah.
That's what I have for them.
Was there a sexual assault there?
I know that some of them were sexually assaulted, but for some reason I didn't
yeah, I can't remember. Anyway,
come up with which one.
I don't want to derail the.
No, I know some of the female victims were found undressed, or their pants somewhat undone.
Yep.
In a way that suggested sexual assault.
Right. Okay, I might just be making it up. I think as you keep going, it'll. Yeah. Okay. Anyway,
I do have more about how our next set of victims were killed. Caroline Clark, who was 21, and Joanne Walters, who was 22, were British backpackers last seen in April 1992, leaving King's Cross, which is like a local kind of traveler, pathway meeting area.
Okay.
They were going to go hitchhiking to Victoria to go work picking fruit, much like Paul Onions was.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
Mm-hmm. They were killed only 5 months before they were found.
Okay, that's short for most of his victims.
This is the shorter turnaround, yeah. So Joanne was found gagged. She had been stabbed 14 times, and her spinal cord was also severed.
God damn it.
Mm-hmm. She had no defensive wounds, so people think that in general this is a thing, and they think that this was done. She was paralyzed first, so that all the other wounds she wouldn't fight back.
God, that's so fucking horrifying.
It's a literal horror movie.
Actually is.
Quite literally, yeah. So Caroline Clark was blindfolded and had been shot 10 times. And for reasons that aren't totally clear to me, but I trust authorities here, she was quote unquote used as target practice.
Jesus. Okay, I'm glad we don't have more information on that. Like, I don't really know the specifics there, like related to that. That's not. I'm not into it. Not into it.
Yeah. So these victims hadn't been robbed. And cigarette butts and kind of trash around the victims' bodies indicated that someone had taken a while at the scene. Like this torture was prolonged. Someone had kind of hung out.
Ugh.
So the discovery of the bodies. Here we go. Only So in October 1993, a man discovers some bones in Belanglo State Forest, and this leads to the first discovery of bodies, which is Deborah Everest and James Gibson.
Okay.
And when they're found, James was curled in a fetal position.
Oh.
So I kind of imagine he might have been stabbed in and was just sort of like trying to protect himself.
Yeah, like, or I to me that means he was trying to make himself small because he was like being beaten, maybe as well. Like that's what comes to mind. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The following month, they find Simone Schmidl, and very shortly thereafter, they find Gabor Neugebauer and Anya Habschied. And I double checked, and I think Anya was sexually assaulted.
Okay, she was. That's what I thought.
But I think some of the women had like signs of it as well.
Yeah.
So police or authorities, Australia in general, are kind of in a frenzy once all these bodies are found back to back to back.
Right.
They release a call for information related to this series of murders, and that starts getting called the Backpacker Murders.
Right.
This story catches the attention of one Paul Onions, who flies back to Australia first thing and tells authorities killing hitchhikers and backpackers, you say?
Wish you all had listened to me to be the first time.
I think I have a candidate. Yeah. So with Paul's help, they eventually figure out that Ivan's a good, strong candidate here. And once Ivan is a suspect, they're like, let's look into this guy. Sorry, my brain's got pause there.
So he helped them create like a profile, right? Like physical, like they drew him with Paul, and then they also like had information that led to them finding him, right?
And probably his car, I would imagine.
Yeah, there was his car as well. Yeah,
so,
for sure.
So they basically, I think the Milats were very known to police as well.
Yes.
So it doesn't take long to figure out that was Ivan that picked Paul up.
Right.
Paul identifies him, and they find also that all the bullets and weapons that Ivan is known to have line up with the ammo that was found. They also sneak around and find that he was gone from his work on all the dates of the murders. So enough evidence lines up for them that they're able to get a search warrant.
Okay.
So May 1994, Ivan is arrested. And his house is raided and searched. They find a ton of the belongings of the victims, like literally all of it.
He just keeps it all. It's not even trophies as much. I don't think that he's just like
he's kind of like a hoarder too. Yeah, like he's like a trophy hoarder.
Yeah, I don't even know that it's like as emotional as like a trophy.
Right.
I think it's just like he's such a like nonsensical kind of person in like his actions and the way that he behaves that he's just like, might as well take the stuff. Like, you know what I mean? It's hard to explain.
I mean, he wasn't like really using much of it. So I think he's also just a hoarder where he's like, stuff.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like not even really thought through. Like, if I ever get caught, or like I have to have this stuff. It was just like,
I think he was really arrogant that he wouldn't get caught. I think
that too. Yeah, agreed.
So they find, like I said, all their backpacks, their tents, their camping gear, every single thing of theirs, identifying stuff. They also find a insane amount of guns and various kinds of weapons. They also find a framed picture of his then girlfriend. I guess he did have a girlfriend.
Okay.
And she's wearing a sweatshirt that is later determined to belong to Caroline Clark.
Oh, come on.
Took it off her body.
And gave it to his girlfriend.
Yes. And her family, Caroline's family, would be also, it's like really sad because they're like, that was her favorite sweatshirt.
Ew, that's terrible.
Yeah. They also raid some of the other Milat family homes, where they find tons and tons of weaponry, cable ties, murdery objects, and other, belongings of the victims. And the other Milats who own those homes or live in them say, oh, Ivan put that there. Ivan brought that over.
Right. And I mean, they were like a weirdly close family, like super dysfunctional, but I think like it's totally possible that he was just like, I'm stashing shit at your house, like whatever.
Yeah, it's possible. So Ivan also lived in his house with his sister Shirley, with whom it is said that he had a long-standing sexual relationship.
Nope. It didn't happen, but nope. That's not acceptable.
Yeah, so the Milats are a lot. His brother George will later say that he's like 1,100% sure that Shirley was in on it. And like, if like not necessarily killing, but like knew about it and was fine with it.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
I
I'd
think-
heard kind of something about that before, but that's wild.
That's just according to George, but I think it's safe to say that several Milats knew that he was, at the very least, robbing people,
Right.
or like something was up. Like they
Yeah.
definitely knew all this stuff is there, all this other people's stuff, and like they're just okay. I think some of them were in on it. It's a very murder cult family.
It really is. She was in on it, I think. Like,
It's a little Texas Chainsaw. It's a little
it really is.
murder cult trash family. Yeah.
I'm not surprised that she was in on it. I'm surprised that one of the other siblings like said she was. You know what I mean? Like that's what I find surprising because it seemed like they kind of all stick together,
They do. Yeah. So that's the thing. I'll talk about one more at the end, but two brothers ever have come out and like talked and like said some trash on Ivan.
Wow.
But overall, Ivan maintains his innocence and his whole creepy ass family backs him up.
Yeah.
They give statements. They say that the police are making it up. They just wanted to make Ivan look bad, which is like, who cares about this guy?
Yeah. like why? What's the conspiracy about this dude? Like, what is he?
Why would there be a conspiracy? Did they plant all those backpacks? Like, why?
Right?
Okay, that's a hard thing for police to plant, like giant backpacks.
And listen, I'm not saying I wouldn't put it past the police. It's like this doesn't make sense though.
No, police do plant shit all the time. They do conspiracies all the time. But I'm just saying, with a mountain of backpacks, that's not the first thing I would say they plant.
No.
Have you seen a backpacker's backpack? It's massive.
They're fucking huge. That's why I don't backpack.
They're like 8 feet tall.
No,
God, no. Whenever I see people in Europe, whenever I see them like on the trains with those, I'm like, ugh.
Yeah, your back gets so sweaty, it's disgusting, and it's heavy. Fuck all that.
My back would hurt. No way.
Oh, for sure. I mean, they have like a strap on the bottom to like help support, but like it doesn't do that much.
Backpacking is not for me.
No,
Absolutely
nor
not.
I love being outside, but like, nah, that's too much. Nope.
No. I'm grateful I can stay in hotels.
Yes.
So, thank God. Okay. All right, so the case of the 7 murders is obviously huge news, sensationalized in the media. There's a trial because, of course, Ivan is pleading not guilty, which is fucking stupid.
Yep.
There's a ton of witnesses called, over 100, including Paul, who comes to recount his ordeal. All the parents of the victims are there. Some of the parents remark of like how weird that like how nondescript Ivan looks and kind of like just a random dork, and they're like, really, this guy did all of this?
Like this is the evil mastermind behind all these murders?
Yeah, it's really lame. So
I feel the same way.
I'll skip past the trial a little bit, but just suffice to say he got convicted of all 7 murders and he got 7 consecutive life sentences plus 18 years.
Wow.
The 18 years was for abducting Paul Onions or for like shooting at him, I guess. I guess he didn't quite abduct him yet, but he had shot at him.
Right, which is funny that he got 18 years for that, considering the cops didn't even take him seriously when he went and reported it. It's like such a show. They're like doing it for show. Like, oh, we're tough on this. It's like, you didn't even give a fuck before, dude. Like, anyway.
Ivan got no chance at parole and he was sent to a supermax security prison, which I imagine had some other Australian serial killers to keep him company in it.
I'm sure, yes.
Yes. And because Ivan always said he was innocent, we don't know about his other victims, and police and literally everyone who knows anything about this case are about 1,000,000,000% sure, not even ambiguous, 1,000,000,000% sure that there's more victims.
For sure.
Lots more. Some say it's more like 30. People are putting it in the 30s. Who knows? But it's much, much higher.
For sure. I mean, with the frequency that he was killing, like, and
it wasn't once a year.
No fucking way. And like the way he was doing it was obviously something he had practiced and like perfected. Like, you don't do something like that, like the spine cutting. That's not like a first try kind of thing. That's not even like a 5th try kind of thing.
And he didn't kill someone and be like, oh, I'm good for a year.
Yeah, no way.
It was more like probably more like every couple months.
Yes,
at the furthest. So it's 100% sure there's more victims, and there's also a lot of Redditing and stuff online connecting all the different missing persons in the Belanglo kind of area, New South Wales area, and potentially connecting them to him. So that's a whole other kind of sidetrack you can go down. But suffice to say, there's a lot more than 7.
Yes, agreed.
7's just the ones that were found.
Right.
So 2012, this is just a random fucking aside. Ivan's great nephew, Matthew Milat, was 19 at the time, along with a friend of his named Cohen Klein, murdered another friend, David Opterloni, with an axe in Belanglo.
Dude.
And then they bragged about it to people. They also murdered David on his birthday, which is shitty.
That's fucked up. Although I definitely like when I die, I would love for it to be on my birthday because it just feels really like, it's like a whole number.
Yeah, that's true.
You're
I
not
guess.
like a certain age and days. It's just like you're exactly that
Sure.
age. And that happens. But anyway,
Okay.
sorry. Finding a
But
silver
yeah,
lining.
I don't know. I mean, the fact that it's Belanglo could just be because that's where he lived. I don't know if Matthew was specifically trying to like be like Ivan or what, but the
Yeah.
Milats are a lot still.
Yeah, they are.
They continued to be. In 2019, Ivan was diagnosed with esophageal cancer.
Woo-hoo.
Yep. And in the final days of his life, the police did an interview with Ivan just saying, he's dying. He's going to die any day. Maybe we'll try to get a confession out of him.
Yeah,
and Ivan,
right.
being the fucking asshole that he is like, nope. He does this really annoying thing where he pretends to be asleep and he's obviously not.
Yeah.
And they have to pretend to be like, are you okay? Are you awake? And he's just like, this with his eyes closed.
Childish and like so gross. Fuck that guy.
So annoying.
Yes.
And here's some really disgusting, annoying quotes from that interview on his final pre-death interview. He said, quote, whether you believe me or not, please hear this in like the Australian accent. I can't do it. But he says, whether you believe me or not, that's up to yous. I don't count, immaterial to me. But I know in my heart, in front of God or wherever, I'm quite, quite happy when I say this.
Did he refer to God as a place? In front of God or wherever? Or was he saying
yeah.
Okay.
No, he said in front of God or wherever. Basically, he's like, I don't care if you believe me. I'm innocent.
No, you're not.
He ended things on, I don't care. That's it.
Yeah, he's got the emotional like capacity of like a 5-year-old. The maturity, it's ridiculous.
Less than that, yeah.
Yeah, like tantrum throwing and all that shit.
Yeah,
yeah.
Sure.
Fuck that guy.
So obviously he died in 2019. Rest not in peace. Rest in hell. After his death, his brother Boris Milat did a very nuts interview with 60 Minutes Australia. You can go watch on YouTube. He was at that time the last surviving member of the Milat brothers and sisters.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
because they're not that old.
I mean, I guess they were not in great health, baby too. But yeah, Boris is interesting because he does seem to be the only one with like maybe had a conscience. He really condemns Ivan. He gets really emotional when he's asked about the victims. He talks about growing up with Ivan and basically how he was like knew this. He said something. I don't have the exact quote, but he said something like, "I knew he was going to kill people from like day one."
Right.
Like, he's a tiny baby. This kid wants to kill people.
Right. He had a Paul Onions moment with his brother.
Yes,
he just
bad
knew.
from day one. Of course, he like picked on him, all this horrible stuff. So it's a really interesting interview where you can just hear about the horribleness of his whole life. And poor Boris, who seems like a decent guy. Yeah, so that's my last 2 points here. That's Ivan Milat in a nutshell. Check out Ivan's house, which I just added to the murder map. It is still a house. You can live there. It was not demolished or anything.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's on the Patreon for anybody wondering.
Murder map of murder locations. Yeah, so his house is there. It's kind of wild to me that someone lives there. Although I don't think he killed anyone in his house.
But still.
He did it on the go.
Yeah, I'm not trying to live in like Ted Bundy's old house, like
right.
Off-site killing. They still lived there. It's gross. I don't love it.
They did. Their vibes are there.
Yes.
So finally, I have to give a shout out to the 2005 movie Wolf Creek, which is based somewhat loosely, somewhat accurately in some other ways on Ivan Milat. The fictionalized version of him is named Mick Taylor, and he is fantastic.
Yes.
There's a Wolf Creek 2, which I think is a lot better than
really.
Wolf Creek
I never
1.
watched it. I never watched it.
It's slightly less like faithful to the murders, but it's fantastic. I think Wolf Creek 2 is a lot better.
It stands alone. Well, Wolf Creek 1 I thought was good in that it was like bleak as fuck. It was super violent.
Yeah, Wolf Creek 2 is in keeping with that. I would say it's a little cheesier, but it's still very good.
All right.
I really enjoy Wolf Creek 2. To my knowledge, there's not a 3 yet. But they also did a Wolf Creek show in 2016, and there's 2 seasons of it on Shudder.
Whoa.
Yeah, with the same guy. And I don't know if we've seen the first season, but I think Sam and I watched the second season, and it is ridiculous. And I won't spoil it, but Mick Taylor abducts a whole bus of like teens.
That's amazing.
It's awesome. It's just like Ivan Milat fan fiction. It's so weird. It's so fucking weird. But I really love that actor, and I love the Wolf Creek franchise. I also I forgot this earlier. Sorry, I know I'm speaking forever, but I wanted to say that I think one of the brothers, I think it was Boris or George, maybe it was George, said that Ivan told him, or was it brother or someone else? Anyway, someone said that Ivan told him that he knew how to make turn a person into just a quote head on a stick.
Yeah.
So that's an iconic line from the first Wolf Creek,
yes.
and Ivan Milat did say that.
According to whomever's, yeah.
Yes, head on a stick. But yeah, check out those fantastic movies, and also there's a lot of like horror set in the Australian outback. There's one called Downrange. It's quite good. That's a Shudder movie.
I think it's just like a good place for it because it's kind of scary.
Yeah.
There
you go.
Well, there it is. Okay. Fuck, dude. I fucking hate that guy. I'm so glad he died.
You can just tell the vibes, and like just a photo of him, you're like, ugh.
Yeah.
You can just tell.
Yeah. You can. It's crazy.
And you can also tell that he was insufferable, like just like in the grocery store. You know,
annoying,
like you can just tell. Yeah, you can tell that he was insufferable and annoying in all contexts.
He's the guy that would like pose with his knife out to make sure somebody saw him and was like, "Ooh, that guy's tough."
He would complain if his like grocery checkout like amount was wrong.
Yeah, he's
that guy.
Yeah. It's like those rugged dudes that you see, like they've got like the mountain man beard and they look all big, and then they like get into like a Fiat and you're like, what is happening? That's Ivan Milat.
He's really
he is annoying. I love Fiats. Anyway, okay. Let's move on to my case. This is the murders of Kirk Wiseman and Cynthia Freyer.
Okay.
This occurred in 1978.
All right, peak serial killer time.
Yes, and it was solved. It started being solved in 2015, and I think 2019 was like the official, we've solved it. And then January of this year is when they finally came forward with the information.
Wow.
Now, a quick backstory. I was living up in Oregon and made some friends because my kid made friends with their kid, and then we all became friends and we would hang out. And so my friend's brother-in-law, Devin Mast, was over for like a barbecue that we were at my friend's house, and I said that I had a true crime podcast, and he was like, I'm a forensics guy, and he was like, yeah, I'm working on this case, and he told me the story of this case, but then he was like, I can't give you any names because we haven't officially like come out and solved it, so I can't tell you who it is.
I would be so happy to find a forensic scientist at a party. Like I would be so stoked.
It was amazing. We talked for like an hour, and everybody was listening. Everybody was like super like invested in what he was saying, but he couldn't give me names. So then this list comes up and I randomly pick this and I start reading it. And I was like, there's no fucking way that this is not that same story. So I hit my friend up and I'm like, can I talk to Devin? And he's like, absolutely. And 2 days later, we're doing a PowerPoint presentation about this case.
Cool.
So I apologized to him in advance because I told him I'd send him this so he can hear it. If I get any of this wrong, there's a few things that I was like, I think I have this right. I am not a scientist. I'll do my best. So November 17th, 1978, around 5:30 in the evening, police get a call near Lake of the Woods, which is right off of Dead Indian Memorial Highway. And yes, that's what it's called.
There's a lot of those.
Oregon, yeah.
Santa Barbara has an Indio Muerto street as well.
Okay, well, this one apparently, long ago, there were 2 dead indigenous people on the highway. And to commemorate them, and like it wasn't meant disrespectfully, it was meant to like honor their memory. Don't know how good a job they did with that name, but anyway, I did look up the history because I was like, this is such a fucked up name. Like,
yeah.
And I drove this highway at one point. It's terrifying. Like I had to drive from Ashland to Bend because of fires, so I couldn't get home on my regular route. So I had to go up the 5 and then cut across through like the forest, and this would be a terrifying place to die. So I really feel for these kids. Anyway. So the police get this call on November 17th, 1978. A man finds skeletal remains. Deputies come out. The guy's cutting firewood when he finds it. They come out and pretty quickly they find a body. And pretty quickly, somehow, they identify the body as Kirk Wiseman. He's from Southern California. His birthday was June 19th, 1959. So at the time, he was 19 years old. They secure the scene. They keep looking. They find a bunch more evidence, and they find another body. This is 17-year-old Cynthia Freyer, born October 22nd, 1960. She was also from Southern California. They found a ton of evidence, including, the way that they were murdered. They were both shot in the head multiple times with a .22 caliber gun, which is funny because that was the gun used in my last case. A small gun. Cynthia had been raped, but at the time, DNA wasn't really a big thing. And also, they weren't finding obvious evidence of that, but she was.
Okay.
So police did have a ton of leads. They followed up on all of these leads. They did a really good job collecting evidence as well. None of these leads ever seemed to really pan out, but they did keep evidence, which is not something that a lot of people in 1978 necessarily do. So that was really good. The really kind of sad thing that I listened to the press conference about this, and police admitted that they had a suspect that they were so sure did it that they basically like ruined his life, like hounding him endlessly because they're like, we know you fucking did it. And spoiler alert, he didn't. So they're like, we had like, oh, they like apologized to him at the press conference, which is nice. But unfortunately, after many years, the case goes cold. And this is despite the police doing like everything they could to find.
Actually did their job.
Yeah, they really went for it.
Okay.
So because there wasn't DNA, there wasn't much that they could do. So this kind of falls into cold case purgatory. But like I said, they collected evidence really, really well, and they preserved it. And some of this evidence, I'll go through it, but I just want to mention there's a blue jacket that had blood and other stains on it, and that's going to come into play. The jacket also likely belonged to Cynthia. So now we're at 1996. It's been 18 years. And this is when DNA stuff is kind of coming to the forefront. It's starting to like be a thing, right? So they take a look at the evidence again. And this is when forensics, they're like, okay, we are looking at the blood stains. We're looking at the semen in her underwear. We're trying to match it. It's definitely sperm. So they do a DNA, they run the DNA and they find that it matches Kirk, the semen. So they were a couple. They were traveling around. They were sexually active.
Okay.
They also found that the blood on the jacket, the blood that they had tested, belonged to the victims. So they had nothing about the suspect. There was no
nothing
DNA
outside. Yeah,
that they could find from the suspect. They were also trying to connect these murders to others in the area, but no dice. Now we're in 2015. That's it. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. In 2000, they did look at some cigarette butts. They looked again at the jacket, but again, no dice. So now we're in 2015. So 15 years have passed since the last time they tried anything, but they start to look into it again. And this is when, not right away, but this is when Devin Mast, who was lovely enough to tell me about this, gets involved. So Devin's a forensic scientist who works in the Bend Crime Lab. And he's obviously very good at his job because without him, the case would not have been solved. Like, straight up.
Love it.
Straight up. And I can say this, he was very, very humble about it. But like, you could tell, he said like, this is a bucket list thing for a forensic scientist to solve a cold case. Like,
it's rarer than you'd think from like crime shows, I think.
Yeah. Especially one this old, like pretty fucking amazing. So the police holding the conference that after this was solved said that he was a very special person. They gave him a lot of, credit for this and they should. So let me try to relay what he told me. Let's hope I'm accurate. So basically in 2017, he started to look back over the evidence that had been determined to possibly contain biological material. Like I said, the material had been looked at many times. They thought they had something. And then in 2015, they'd started to kind of be like, okay, we think this is more viable, right? So he gets involved and he decides that he wants to take like a holistic look at the case. So he's trying to look at everything, kind of like reconstructing the case as a technique for figuring out the evidence. So he looks back at all the evidence collected at the scene, including this jacket. There were other items. There was pubic hair, head hair, her shirt, her pants,
whole cornucopia of
like all of their clothing
stuff.
Their shoes, like everything is there. So Devin at this point in our talk mentioned how good the evidence was and how happy he was because he's like, I'll go look for a case and be like, oh, there was a hat as part of this case. Now that we have DNA, like we can look at that hat and possibly figure out who did this. And then they're like, we don't know where the hat is. No. It either got thrown out or when
Classic
they moved
lost
offices.
Evidence.
Yeah, but the way that he kind of talked about it made me a little more sympathetic to police because it's like, how would somebody in 1978 know that someday we're going to be able to like use DNA like less than the amount of the head of a pin to like solve a crime? You know what I mean?
Right.
So it doesn't necessarily like after 20 years throwing something away isn't necessarily like, oh, you're an idiot. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like you might not know.
We just know that in hindsight that they were an idiot.
Yes, exactly. But in this case, he got every single thing that he had asked for, like evidence wise, which is rad. So he looks at the pubic hairs for semen, can't find anything on there. He looked at all the clothing, and finally he comes to the jacket. And he admits this wasn't the first thing he was interested in because, like, it's not necessarily, like, of all the things that you would have biological matter on during a rape, a jacket seems kind of not
your
the
first
top pick.
No.
Right. Also, the jacket wasn't on either of their bodies. So it's like, doesn't really make a lot of sense that it would have got shit on it, right?
Yeah.
So he decides to use reconstruction to find probative evidence. So basically, like, kind of putting the scene back together to find evidence that can kind of solve the case, essentially. So in the case of the jacket, he kind of did this thing where, so he found it away from the body, but Cynthia's blood was on it. So he knew that. So his question became, how did the blood get there? The answer is, you were wearing it, or you were near it while you were bleeding. You're wearing it while you're bleeding, you're near it. Okay, so why are you bleeding? Why was Cynthia bleeding? Because she was being assaulted. Is the assault that led to her bleeding part of a sexual assault? So he knew that she was raped, so the answer is yes. So he looked at the jacket for a sexual component because he's like, she was being raped and murdered simultaneously. Her blood's on the jacket. It stands to reason that there might be something else on the jacket, right?
It's gruesome.
Right. There's another way that they use reconstruction, but I feel less confident in explaining that. But I think, like, they find a bunch of items that may help prove a case, so you kind of try to put them where they belong within the case. But I don't know. Devin, tell me if I got that wrong. I'm not trying so hard on that one. So on the jacket, so he starts to look at the jacket. He decides, I'm going to look for, like, semen on this jacket because it stands to reason it might be there because there's blood on it. Even though it wasn't on her, you know, it might still have something. He finds 50 stains using, like, a special fluorescent light. So there's 50 potential stains. So the next step that he did in the lab was looking for acid phosphatase, I think is what it's called, which is an enzyme commonly found in semen. So basically that's like the majority of what semen is made of. So it's like, okay, let's look for that because some of these might be semen, right? None of the samples he tested were positive for acid phosphatase. I wrote it down, but, like, I think I wrote it down wrong. So anyway.
Okay.
So now under normal guidelines, he said, you know, we'd stop. Because if this were a newer case and there's none of that there, then it's not semen. But with an older case, it may have degraded. So now he's thinking, I don't want to give up yet. I want to do, like, a more in-depth look at this to see if I can determine if this is actually semen, because I really think it is. So he takes this extra step. He looks at 4 stains that, based on his experience, meaning he just uses eyeballs and common sense, and said, these 4 look like semen stains. And I'm using the word semen despite my desire to use the word that I would normally use when talking about stains of this nature. But I'm trying to keep it scientific.
He knows it when he sees it.
He knows it when that's basically what he said.
Yeah.
So there's one in particular that he's like, that is definitely a semen stain. It's the right size. It's the right color, which is so gross. No. So he's like, all right, I'm doing this. So he puts it under a microscope using a stain. And guess what he found?
Bingo, brongo.
Sperm cells. Yes.
Bing, 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 bing.
And I actually wrote, his quote was, you know a semen stain when you see one, which is like our new tagline.
Yeah.
So he tests the DNA and they come up with a profile for unknown male number 1.
Okay.
So it's not the boyfriend. They're like,
finally someone else.
New. Yes. 40. This is like 41 years later. Okay. Fucking amazing. So they upload it to CODIS, which is where all the bad guys' semen and DNA is. I hate the idea of it being their semen. It's their DNA. So it sat in there for 6 months. And he said sometimes it takes that long because there's so much in there. So it can actually take a really long time to match it up to everything and see if something fits. So, you know, it's taking a really long time. Nothing pops up. Enter Dan Howry. Very tenacious. Kept checking every month. He's a detective on the case. He's basically how they got the funding to do this. So Devin is the guy who finds the sperm and is like, we can use this to solve this case. And this detective is the guy who's like, we are fucking making this happen. I'm getting the funding for this. We're going to make it. We're going to do it.
Yeah.
So he keeps calling. Devin said, like, he called me every month. What's the progress? What's going on? He starts asking about Parabon nanolabs because he's like, I know about the Golden State Killer case. If anybody doesn't know, like, Parabon was the one that cracked that case using DNA.
Yeah.
So he's like, can we do that for this case? And he's like, this is this guy, like the case of his life, right?
Yeah,
so
he's on a mission.
He is. So he's like, we're doing Parabon. So he starts, this detective starts hounding the DA for funding. So it's like $8,000 to take it to Parabon, right? But they do. The DA is like, fine, oh my God, if you think we're going to crack it, like, let's do it. So they give him funding, even though like Oregon is not like rich with funding for this shit, you know?
Right.
So there's not enough DNA when they go to Parabon. Parabon's like, we don't have it. They need 1 nanogram of DNA. But this sperm cell fraction had only 0.15 nanograms.
Ooh, that's a teeny. How do you even see it? It's so
exactly, because he's a badass. So a nanogram, for everybody's reference, is 1/100000th of a gram.
Oof.
And for those of us who were weed smokers or dealers, when you think about a gram, it's $20 of weed. Think about how tiny that is. Can you split that into a billion? Like, into a billion pieces?
So small.
Absolutely tiny. Tiny amounts.
Anything nano, like nanotechnology, or like,
it's insane.
Real small.
Yeah. And just amazing that that's even like in our world, you know?
It is. Yeah.
So like I said, I'm blown away that Devin even found this. It just like the whole thing is crazy. So Parabon's like, we can use less than 1 nanogram, which also is insane, but we're not going to get as much information. So this detective keeps on his little tenacious track here, and he gets even more funds to send this out to Marshall University, which has a lab that's able to extract 4.3 nanograms of DNA. Yeah. So, because Devin at Bend, he was like, listen, obviously he's very good at his job, but they just don't have the technology there. They're not, like, they're more of like an all-purpose crime lab. They're not like a nanotechnology lab. They don't
specialize in that.
Yeah, this university, like, this is what they do. And it's a good thing, he said, that they got the extra grams of extra nanograms of DNA, because it's degraded. So having extra is good in case some of it like sucks, you know?
Yeah.
So they run this through and they come up with a profile. It's a Caucasian male, brown hair, brown or green eyes. That's every single man in Oregon.
Yeah.
And especially in the 70s, like
that's the profile.
That's it. I lived in Oregon for like a year and a half, and I was like, I need to leave. I need to see people who are not the same skin tone as me only. Like it's like Christmas up there. It's just white everywhere. It's insane. So yeah. Enter Cece Moore, the chief genealogist at Parabon. So obviously an absolute badass. She goes through the DNA and recreates a family tree. And using this tree, she's able to narrow it down to 2 people. Only 2 suspects that are like, it's one or the other for sure. She could have narrowed it down to 1 using this technology, but after the Golden State Killer case came out, people started getting pissed. Like, I don't want you using my DNA that I submitted to like Ancestry or whatever to like catch somebody in my family who like murdered someone. Which also, like, why not? Like, why are you not cool with that?
They're not selling it to anywhere else, and like also places like GEDmatch and stuff. It's just for that purpose. They're not doing anything else with it.
But a lot of people started opting out, so they were like, we don't want any part of this. So they did, like, the detectives reached out to the people who opted out to see if they'd change their minds, but they were like, absolutely not. So they use good old fashioned police work to determine, okay, well, here's suspect 1, here's suspect 2, you know, and so Cece made it a lot easier for this. She basically was like, here are 2 people to look into, figure out which one lived in the area at the time.
Right.
You know, and luckily one of them did, because it could have been they were both passing through and like, who fucking knows? They got lucky though, because one man fit all of these parameters, and that man's name was Ray Whitson. Because police were like, this is our guy, but we want to be super sure. So because the people that opted out refused to opt back in to help confirm this, they reach out to Ray Whitson's family, to this guy's family, and thankfully his ex-wife and 2 living children were down to submit DNA.
So are they like quietly like, fuck this guy? Like,
probably. The thing is, there's not that much known about him, which I'm kind of fine about, because like, I don't want to like, you know, fuck this guy.
Sure.
But they submit their DNA, and they also mention, Devin said, that while they no longer have the gun, that they are absolutely positive that Ray owned a .22 caliber. So they're like, he definitely owned the gun in question. Here's our DNA, and it was absolutely a match.
Wow.
Additionally, it was found out that Ray had moved to Klamath Falls right around 1978 and worked in a lumber mill in the area at the time of the murders. Klamath has logs in the river all the time. Like, if you drive through, there's like logs, because it's a logging town. So this is just like a thing. So basically from there, it's a slam dunk. But very unfortunately, this fucking dickhead died in Houston, Texas in 1996. So the same year they started looking at the case again, he died. And I asked Evan how he died, and he's like, I'm not really sure. I kind of heard it was natural causes. So then I watched the press conference, and they confirmed that it was like a medical thing, and he died.
Okay.
He wasn't that old at that time, but he had bad health, which, like, fuck him. It's like the Milat family. Like, I don't feel bad.
Yeah, maybe it was karma coming back to get him.
Right. Yeah. So here's the kind of the story of what happened. Like, why is this a hitchhiking case, right? Like, where is this all coming from?
Mm-hmm.
And I apologize, this is kind of an afterthought, but like, how often do we get to hear the inner workings of like?
No, it's really interesting. Right? Yeah.
So it's not a lack of respect for the teen victims. It's just, So anyway, basically what happened was these two kids were hitchhiking around the Pacific Northwest. They were camping, traveling, just like enjoying their lives. They'd been in Washington. And in fact, when the bodies were found, there was a letter that Cynthia had written to her mother that was near her body, but had not been sent. And this detailed how much fun they were having, where they had been, that they'd been in Washington, like where they were planning to go. So super sad that it was never given to her family. I do believe that it was given to her family after the case was solved. So like this year, 43 years on or whatever, they finally get the letter. So the couple were hitchhiking from Eugene, where I used to live, to Klamath Falls. And they were near Dead Indian Memorial Highway, which is in the Ashland area. So they traveled south from Eugene down to Ashland, and then they were cutting over onto like the side where I live. So they're going through like this big forested area to get to the other side of Oregon. And they were picked up by Ray Whitson. And they know that they were going to Klamath Falls because they had a hitchhiking sign that said K Falls on it.
Okay.
Also later on, Cynthia's family confirmed that they'd gone to the area before, but they hadn't made it to Crater Lake. So Cynthia wanted to go back and see it. So I think that's
Crater Lake murders too.
Yeah, oh, I'm sure. And I think if I had to bet, I would say that Israel Keys absolutely dumped some bodies in there. At least one. For sure. Like he's mentioned it in interviews and shit.
Okay.
Yeah. P.S. This was like a 45-minute drive from my house in Bend.
It's a very murdery area.
It really is.
It really is, yeah.
Yeah, Israel Key's first victim, who wasn't murdered but was raped, was on the fucking Deschutes River, which I've like floated down. So Pacific Northwest is wild.
We did a Pacific Northwest murders, and we could do a sequel because there's so many.
Like 10 sequels.
Yeah.
I forgot to mention this. I'm sorry, but they did also have their dog with them, and its body was found as well.
No,
so, I know, really sad. I know. Horrible. So it's not clear exactly what happened, but what we can kind of figure out is he picked them up, probably held them at gunpoint in his truck, took them out to this area, which is like in the middle of nowhere. Like driving through there the whole time, I was like, oh my God, if I break down, I'm going to die. I'm fucking dead.
Bigfoots are going to get you.
If nothing else, or fucking another Ray Whitson.
Yeah.
So, then they were killed. I think if I had to guess, just kind of based on my true crime knowledge, he probably killed Kirk, then assaulted and killed Cynthia.
Yeah.
And shockingly, this guy was never, ever a suspect in the case.
Wow.
All the
flew totally under the radar.
Yes. Of all the leads they had, he was never mentioned once. And they asked in the conference, they're like, was he ever a suspect? And they're like, shockingly, no. Like, we didn't even really know who he was. So it basically took Devin doing this science magic, using his eye for semen stains, and
oh my gosh,
just being an amazing badass who like did not give up to make this happen. And when I was telling him like this is amazing, his response to me was, I'm just the nerd who found the stain.
The nerd who found the stain.
Like that's a great like book title. Like,
I was gonna say that's the title of his book. It's autobiography.
He really should write a book about this. So anyway, I hope that was interesting. I thought it was really cool to understand how they came to find this. It felt like a very special episode of like Forensic Files.
Yeah, so, very Forensic Files. Yeah, I could see him with like the little like test tube in the lab.
And not giving up after having like a no answer the first time, being like, this didn't show up because it's degraded. I'm going to keep pushing. And he did. And then he found it. And like, sorry guys, we lost internet connection while we were talking about how amazing this case was. But
I was trying to say how like incredible it is that he didn't give up basically. And like how the one way didn't work. And he's like, let's try something else. And I think that's like really like a great way to be.
I love it. But it also like, I hate to say in the back of my head, I was like, I bet there are so many cases that could be solved if there were just more people like him doing this instead of people who just like give up or like
really good at their jobs,
or even people who aren't giving up but like just look in the wrong direction or just miss one little thing and then the case goes cold. And it made me think about that because he was so great and didn't do that. Yeah. So I'm just like so impressed and so happy that I recognized the case and happened to look at the case and that you
That's
picked
so
the
cool.
case. Like so many things had to happen to make this a reality. So that's pretty
That's
amazing.
cool.
I
We
hope
should
everybody likes it.
Someday we could do a special Patreon where we like interview him or something. Or
oh my God. He was like, don't put my voice on it, but you can like quote me. And I was like, yeah, no, I
that's
get
so
it.
fun.
Like, yeah, that would be cool though. I did like kind of record some of it, but not in a usable format because I didn't want to like be disrespectful. So but
I've always said like I wish I could be a forensic scientist, except that I'm like bad at science and
that's the thing.
chemistry and math.
Gotta be good
and I'm not good at it, but it sounds cool.
I loved biology. I was like the unofficial biology tutor, but math is where it gets me. I can do math. It's not as natural for me as like other things, so I get like discouraged and then I
almost failed chemistry. That was really hard. I could not balance a fucking equation, dude. Like I could not do it.
Yeah, it's not easy.
Very hard.
So the people that do it to this level are amazing.
So impressive. Yeah.
So okay, now we have to talk about next week. Diva's gone next week.
I'm sorry. So going to Canada.
We're putting out, which is funny that you're going to Canada because we're putting out more. I'm still going to put stuff out, and I actually have a guest host, my friend Laura from Canada. She's a comedian and she's amazing and hilarious, and she's done stuff with like the Trailer Park Boys. And
she's coming for my gig.
Yeah, she is. She's taking over. And I'm going to tell her about a case, and she's just going to listen and react. And I think it's going to be amazing.
That'll be great. I'm excited to listen to it.
It'll be cool. And then I actually am going to ask another podcast host to not take over, but to join me for the second half. I have not secured that person yet, but we'll figure it out. I'd rather do that than like not put content out. And like, why not? Let's have some fun. Let's enjoy the last few weeks of summer by getting wild while Diva takes a workcation. So is it a workcation? It is, right?
Yeah, it's part work, part cation. Yeah,
that's good.
Little both.
You get a little in there. Yeah. Anyway, so hopefully you guys will tune in next week to see what's shaken with my hilarious Canadian friend and our
and I'll be hanging out with a Canadian friend and devoted listener of ours.
Yay,
so
amazing. And then the second half we'll see who I get, but I think it'll be somebody good. So anyway, until so yeah, we don't have a topic for next week. I'm just going to pick cases that I think will freak Laura out, and then I don't know what we're doing for the next one. So
sounds good.
It's going to be a mystery until next week. And speaking of next week, until then,
stay
off our
list.
Bye.